In the year 800,000, humanity was on the brink of establishing total dominion over the galaxy through research at a classified military lab that could spell doom for their telepathic alien foes, the Iridians. Darren Foster squinted down a microscope in the dim light of the high-tech xenobiology lab deep within mankind's most secret military base. He stared at the alien brain tissue sample, desperately searching for a way to neutralize the Iridians' mind control powers. Sergeant Hawkins stomped into the lab, boots clanking on metal. He barked, "Foster, the General demands an update. Now, can you stop the Iridians' telepathy or not?" Foster looked up, eyes red and strained. "Almost. I found an enzyme in their brain that's key, but synthesizing it is a bitch." Hawkins scowled, battle scars twisting. "Work faster. Iridian forces are about to break our front lines. We need your counterweapon yesterday, or humanity is finished." The weight of the human species pressed on Foster's tired shoulders. He recalled when Iridians first contacted Earth centuries ago, feigning peace. Their gifts of tech and trade were a ploy. Iridian telepaths secretly seized control of Earth's leaders and institutions. By the time humans saw the truth, the Iridians almost conquered Earth. Centuries later, locked in total war, mankind's last hope lay in Foster's research. One sample could turn the tide, but as Foster peered back into the microscope, he sensed something watching from the shadows and feared what failure might bring. Deep within the bowels of the Iridian mothership, a dark and cavernous chamber loomed. The only light came from the eerie glow of Supreme Commander Xanth's large insectoid eyes as he sat upon his throne of twisted metal. The air was thick with a sense of menace, a palpable evil that seemed to emanate from the very walls. A smaller Iridian subordinate, his antennae twitching nervously, approached the throne and bowed low, his exoskeleton rattling softly. "My lord," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "our spies have reported a troubling development. The humans, they have a new weapon, a biological agent that can neutralize our telepathic abilities." Xanth's eyes flashed with anger, his mandibles clicking together in agitation. "Impossible," he hissed, his voice dripping with disdain. "The humans are primitive. Their science is no match for ours." The subordinate cowered before Xanth's fury, his entire body shaking. "But my lord, the reports are confirmed. The human scientist, Darren Foster, has made a breakthrough. If he succeeds—" Xanth rose from his throne, his towering form casting a long shadow across the chamber. "Foster," he said, the name like poison on his tongue. "I know that name. He is the one who has eluded our agents for so long. It seems we have underestimated him." Xanth began to pace, his clawed feet scratching against the metal floor, each step echoing through the chamber. His mind raced with dark thoughts, plans forming and twisting like the metal of his throne. "Send our best infiltrators to the human base," he commanded, his voice cold and hard as steel. "I want Foster and his research eliminated. We cannot allow the humans to gain an advantage." The subordinate nodded quickly, scurrying away to carry out Xanth's orders, leaving the Supreme Commander alone with his thoughts. Xanth moved to the large viewport that dominated one wall of the chamber, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The distant stars looked back, cold and unfeeling, offering no comfort or solace. "The humans think they can defy us," Xanth whispered, his voice filled with a quiet rage. "But they do not know the true extent of our power. We have ways of breaking them that they cannot even imagine." As he spoke, Xanth's eyes began to glow even brighter, a sickly, pulsing light that seemed to fill the chamber. A low, menacing chuckle began to build in his throat, growing louder and louder until it echoed through the room, a promise of the horrors yet to come. Back in the secret human military base, Foster's fingers danced across the holographic interface of the advanced gene sequencer. Sweat beaded on his brow as he inputted complex algorithms, his tired eyes scanning the scrolling data. The enzyme's molecular structure rotated on the display, tantalizing, close to giving up its secrets. Just a few more tweaks and the code would be cracked. Humanity's salvation was within reach. But an icy tingle crept up Foster's spine, a gnawing sensation of unseen eyes boring into his back. Suddenly the light sputtered and died, casting the lab into inky blackness. Foster's hand instinctively darted to the pistol at his hip as his pulse quickened. Shadows shifted in the periphery of his vision. He wheeled around, a round blasting from his gun as a grotesque visage materialized from the gloom. The muzzle flash illuminated a hideous insectoid face mere inches from his own. Noxious green fluid oozing from its clacking mandibles. Foster staggered back in revulsion as the Iridian infiltrator sprung at him, jagged claws slicing the air. He squeezed the trigger again, but the fiend twisted with inhuman speed, the bullet whizzing harmlessly past as it crashed into him. They tumbled to the floor in a tangle of thrashing limbs, delicate equipment shattering around them in showers of sparks. Foster gagged on the creature's putrid breath and felt needle-like pincers graze his jugular. Summoning every ounce of strength, he wrapped his hands around the Iridian's sinewy throat and clamped down with a desperate howl. The infiltrator bucked and flailed beneath him, but Foster squeezed harder, tendons bulging in his straining arms. With a sickly crunch, the creature shuddered and fell still, viscous fluid seeping from cracks in its splintered exoskeleton. Foster slumped against a smashed console, lungs heaving as crimson emergency lighting washed over the grisly tableau. The dead Iridian's compound eyes stared up at him, glazed and lifeless, and an icy dread gripped his heart. His research was compromised. The Iridians knew and would unleash hell itself to destroy his work. Time was running out. He had to finish the enzyme code and get it to High Command before the alien menace snuffed out mankind's last hope. Foster's bloodshot eyes strained as lines of code danced across the holographic display, the enzyme's molecular structure rotating lazily above the console. His hands trembled, a potent cocktail of caffeine, desperation and raw adrenaline coursing through his veins. Just a few more keystrokes, a tweak to the polymer sequencing, and humanity's salvation would be complete. Suddenly a deafening klaxon tore through the lab's hushed atmosphere, red emergency lights pulsing in time with the urgent wailing. Foster's stomach knotted, a wave of icy dread washing over him. They were here. The Iridians had come for him at last. Snatching up the briefcase containing his precious research, Foster sprinted for the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. Chaos engulfed the corridors as soldiers and scientists alike fled in all directions, the staccato bark of gunfire and inhuman shrieks echoing off the metal walls. Foster wove through the panic-stricken throng, singular purpose driving him onward. He had to get the enzyme data to safety, no matter the cost. Rounding a corner, he skidded to a halt as a trio of Iridian warriors loomed before him, their chitinous armor glinting menacingly in the strobing light. Plasma rifles whined as they swung towards him, but Foster was quicker. His hand flew to his belt, snatching a cylindrical device from its holster, a prototype delivery system for his enzyme weapon. Depressing the trigger, he unleashed a billowing cloud of sickly green mist that engulfed the alien soldiers. The Iridians convulsed, screams of agony torn from their throats as the enzyme ravaged their brain tissue, neutralizing their telepathic abilities in a brutal onslaught. Foster didn't pause to witness their demise, leaping over the writhing bodies and pounding onward, lungs searing with each ragged breath. At last, the base's hangar came into view, a sleek fighter craft prepped and waiting on the launch pad. Foster clambered into the cockpit, fingers flying over the controls with practiced precision. The engines roared to life, thrusters flaring brilliant blue as the ship tore free from its moorings and hurtled into the night sky. Behind him, a massive fireball bloomed as the base erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, the shockwave buffeting his ship as it streaked away. In the chaotic maelstrom, a small insectoid figure clung tenaciously to the fighter's undercarriage, unseen, its multifaceted eyes glittering with malice. As the inky void of space enveloped him, Foster allowed himself a moment of relief, unaware of the hidden threat lurking just beneath his feet. He had escaped, his vital work intact, buying humanity precious time in its desperate struggle. But deep inside, a gnawing unease twisted in his gut. The Iridians would never relent, never rest until they had eliminated him and the mortal danger his research posed. In saving his species, Foster had damned himself to a life of unending flight and terror, haunted by the knowledge that the slightest misstep could spell doom for all mankind. Stars streaked past the cockpit, cold and distant, offering no comfort as the fighter plunged deeper into the abyss. The war still raged, a conflict that would consume countless lives and reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. And for Darren Foster, the true horror was only just beginning, an unending nightmare played out against the infinite darkness between the stars. The fighter drifted listlessly through the void, a lifeless husk adrift in an uncaring cosmos. Inside, an eerie stillness pervaded the cockpit, the only sound the soft hiss of recycled air and the muted beep of idle instrumentation. Foster slumped in the pilot's chair, his sightless eyes staring into the infinite depths of space. A thin rivulet of crimson snaked from the corner of his slack mouth, painting a macabre trail down his pallid flesh, a grim testament to his final, futile struggle against the Iridian infiltrator. In the co-pilot's seat, the briefcase sat undisturbed, its polished surface reflecting the ghostly glow of distant stars. Within its reinforced confines lay the fruits of Foster's labors, the key to humanity's salvation, or its ultimate downfall. A sudden movement shattered the sepulchral calm. From the shadows, a figure emerged, its chitinous exoskeleton cracked and weeping viscous ichor. The Iridian infiltrator, battered but unbroken, dragged itself towards the briefcase, its multifaceted eyes gleaming with malevolent purpose. With trembling claws it pried open the case, revealing the neat rows of vials nestled within. A raspy hiss of triumph escaped its mandibles as it beheld the enzyme, the weapon that would reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. The infiltrator's mind raced with visions of conquest and glory. With this power, the Iridians would be unstoppable, their telepathic might amplified 1,000-fold. They would sweep across the stars like a plague, consuming all in their path until only the Iridian Imperium remained. Grasping the briefcase with reverent claws, the infiltrator turned to the ship's navigation console. It began to input coordinates, plotting a course to the heart of the Iridian Armada, where it would present its prize to the Supreme Commander himself. As the ship hummed to life, preparing for the jump to hyperspace, a flicker of movement caught the infiltrator's compound eye. The vials in the briefcase pulsed with an eerie, sickly glow, their contents seeming to writhe and churn within the glass confines. Suddenly the vials burst asunder, disintegrating into a glittering cloud of luminous particles. They swarmed the infiltrator, drawn to it like iron filings to a magnet. The Iridian recoiled, mandibles clacking in confusion and dawning horror. The particles bored through its exoskeleton, tunneling into the soft, vulnerable flesh beneath. They multiplied exponentially, flooding the infiltrator's body with agonizing, coruscating light. A shrill keen of agony ripped from the Iridian's throat as it collapsed, its limbs jerking spasmodically. Within moments, the infiltrator was reduced to a withered husk, its exoskeleton crumbling to powder, as the all-consuming enzyme devoured it from within. The luminous particles spread, an inexorable tide of destruction sweeping through the ship's interior. Foster's remains dissolved, the last traces of humanity's would-be savior consumed by his own creation. The ship drifted on, an accursed tomb ferrying a cargo of desolation and despair through the eternal night. Across the galaxy, Iridian warships faltered, vital systems flickering and failing as the enzyme made its presence known. One by one, the mighty vessels fell dark and silent, their crews reduced to drifting clouds of ash. The enzyme, it seemed, was no mere weapon. It was Armageddon given form, a final spiteful strike from a doomed species determined to take its foes into oblivion alongside it. In the end, there would be no victor, no triumphant race rising from the ashes of their fallen enemy. There was only the void, cold and infinite, dotted with the gutted remnants of two mighty civilizations laid low by their own hubris. The stars looked on, indifferent to the follies and tragedies playing out in the darkness between them. The galaxy, once a crucible in which the fates of worlds were forged, now stood silent and empty, a grim monument to the destructive potential of unchecked ambition and the ultimate futility of war. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.